Alright, yeah, welcome back to some more Magic Duels. This week we're going to be taking a look at a subscriber deck submitted to us by Gregory Dernbach. It is an Angel Control build. It was inspired by a Star City Games deck, which is pretty cool. I always like seeing some paper decks being converted into Magic Duels, because not all of them are possible since we have the rare restrictions and stuff like that. So anyway, what does this deck do? It destroys things. And then it plays angels to clear out the game. So our angels are obviously Brunner and Lin Viola, and obviously Archangel Iverson and Gisela. So we're going to try this week to get Brucella. Brucella is my ultimate goal for this series. It's going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. But of course there's a lot of removal to get us between here and there. Anyway, let's start at the beginning, shall we? So we want to stabilize and remove all of our creatures, so you can see the entire page here is just all removal. We have Blessed Alliance, a 1 and a white instant speed with Escalate. So you get to choose one of 3 modes, and for each 2 more you pay for it, you get to choose an extra mode. You can't be the same mode, so I can't gain like 6 life off of this, unfortunately. But we do get target player gains 4 life, so it helps us stabilize against burn and aggro. Untap up to 2 target creatures, so this is a bit of a combat trick, so if our opponent thinks we're tapped out, we can possibly get rid of 2 of their creatures by untapping ours. Also, we have some man lands in this deck as well, so we could use this to untap to get a little bit of a cheaper Blessed Alliance in that sense, but then there's no point escalating, but whatever. And target opponent sacrifices an attacking creature, so this is like a Celestial Flare, except for it doesn't have the added bonus of blocking. Fortunately, it does have a lot more utility in it, though, which I think makes it on par. I'd say on par rather than better, because I think sometimes you really want to kill that blocking creature, and they know they don't want to attack with it, but there you go. Moving on, we have Gideon's Reproach. So for 2 and a white instant speed, it deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. So this does what Blessed Alliance can't. It can kill blocking creatures as long as they're 4 toughness or less. So this actually kills a lot of creatures in the format, and it's a really good combat trick for that. It's kind of like White's version of Burn. They just need to get into combat with it in order to remove it though, so that's the one thing about it. We have Grasp of Darkness for 2 black, instant speed, target creature gains -4/-4, so this helps us get past indestructibility. If we can get an indestructible creature down to 0 toughness, it just dies straight up, so that's why Grasp of Darkness is in here. It's also a really solid removal spell, just the same as everything else. And we've got Declaration in Stone. No white deck is complete without a Declaration in Stone. So for 1 and a white, sorcery speed rare, exile target creature and all of the creatures its controller controls with the same name as that creature. Target player investigates for each non-token creature exiled this way. Oh, I always trip up on that one. So yeah, essentially Declaration in Stone allows us to potentially mass remove certain creatures. If they share a name, we can wipe them all off the board, so this is best dealt with tokens because they don't get to investigate off tokens. So if it's a token-based strategy like the Otherworld Mysteries deck perhaps that makes the 1/1 humans, then we can completely clear their board with a Declaration in Stone for 2 mana. We can also get rid of some pesky indestructible creatures with it, like Ulamog or Ormondal and stuff like that. So it's a really good, solid removal spell. It does give our opponent a little bit of advantage if it is a non-token creature that you're removing. But other than that, solid. Moving on, we've got Fleshbag Marauder. This has a little bit of synergy in the deck that I'll show you a little bit later. So for 2 and a black, Zombie Warrior, 3/1. When Fleshbag Marauder enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. So we'll likely sacrifice the Fleshbag. So it's a solid remove one of your opponent's creatures. It's a lot less good if they are running tokens, because you really want to get value out of it. But if they've just got a single Ulamog, for example, in the battlefield, this can get rid of it. If they've got a single Ormondal, if they've got, single Brucella. I think actually Brucella would stop a Fleshbag. Let me just check that actually. It's 3 or less. Yeah, can't cast spells, so you couldn't actually Fleshbag away Brucella. Never mind. So we got 2 of them, and we have plenty of ways of getting it back, which is why it's a 2 of. Moving on, we've got Murder. So for 1 and 2 black, it's an instant speed hard casted removal, yet again in a black control build. It's just an instant addition to the deck. Just destroy target creature, speaks for itself. We've got Anguished Unmaking, so for 1, a white and a black, it is a rare instant speed, exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. So this can get rid of absolutely anything except for lands and man lands and stuff like that. So this is in here to get rid of your planeswalkers, get rid of your indestructible creatures, get rid of any enchantments. So it's got a lot of synergies, a lot of uses, should I say. So that's why it's in here. It's really good for that though. So it's instant keep. The lose 3 life isn't too bad because we do have a lot of life gain as well. So yeah. Call the Gatewatch is a 1-of, so 2 and a white, sorcery speed. Search your library for a planeswalker card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. You can kind of consider this a second planeswalker of anything in this deck. So it's a second Liliana, it's a second Obnixilis, and it's a second Sauron, because we're allowed to tutor it out, except for obviously it'll cost us 3 more. But we get to pick any planeswalker we want and get it onto the battlefield. So whatever situation we're in, we get to call for the right one. We have Read the Bones. This is Control's way of gaining card advantage. So for 2 and a black sorcery speed, you get to scry 2, draw 2, and lose 2. So this can potentially go 4 cards deep for the card that you want. Or if in the scry 2 you get the card that you want, you get exactly what you need. So you can pretty much set up the top of your deck in the exact way that you want it and draw 2 cards. Which is pretty good, pretty good. So it's a 4-of for that. It allows us to keep our hand full, which is what we need to do as a control deck. We have Liliana, the Last Hope, for 1 and 2 black. It's a 3 loyalty planeswalker. There's a few modes. Well, we probably want to use all modes on this planeswalker, to be perfectly honest. So it's +1, allows us to get rid of cheap tokens and little creatures. Really good to protect Liliana in that sense. Her -2 ability is put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, and you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So the -2 ability allows us to get back Fleshbag Marauders, which is what I was on about earlier. It is any creature as well, so we can get back the Gisela and Brucella combo. And also Brunner combo, sorry. We can get back pretty much any creature. It could be a Caritas. You know, all of our creatures that are in this deck are really, really threatening. So that's why pretty much everyone except for Brunner, they're all mythics. And obviously, Fleshbag's not a mythic either, but Fleshbag is a removal spell we can keep getting back with Liliana, so that's pretty good. And then a -7 ability. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control. So if we can land that and we can stabilize, we can get a lot of zombies. So the first turn it comes out, we'll get 2 zombies. On the condition, of course, that we don't have any zombies on the battlefield. The next turn we get 4. Next turn we get 6, and so on and so forth. As long as we don't lose zombies, we should be fine. But at the bare minimum, we always get 2 zombies onto the battlefield, so that this emblem can never be useless, essentially. Moving on, we've got Gisela, the Broken Blade. For 2 and 2 white, we've got a legendary creature, mythic, with flying, first strike, and lifelink. It's kind of like a Baneslayer angel in that sense. 4/3 as well, pretty much can tackle any of the creatures in the format and survive it. Also has at the beginning of your end step, if you control both Gisela and Brunner, you get to meld them into Brucella, and I still haven't done this yet, so this is why this is my objective of this deck series, to hopefully get Brucella out on the battlefield. And this is Brucella. Isn't she pretty? She's got flying, first strike, vigilance, and lifelink, and she's a 9/10. And your opponents can't cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less, which is essentially most of the removal in the format. If we look at our deck, the kind of removal we're running: Anguished Unmaking, 3 mana. Murder, 3 mana. Fleshbag, 3 mana. Declaration, 2 mana. Grasp, 2 mana. and it goes on. And Blessed Alliance as well, 2 mana. So it shuts down a crap ton of removal in the format. The only thing we have in our deck to take out a Brucella is the one of Cruel Revival and our Planar Outburst as well, because it's not indestructible. That is the one downside of Brucella. She is not indestructible, so a board wipe will take her out. But Languish won't do it either, so it kind of really just needs to be a Planar Outburst or something like a Tragic Arrogance. But, you know, it's not going to get removed. It's really difficult to deal with once it's out there. And we can also, I'll show you later on, Brunner can get back Gisela, and then on the same turn that happens, we can get Brucella out. So we could maybe set up a Gisela meld with a Liliana by milling her into our graveyard, for instance. Caritas, Traitor of Get, 2 and 2 black, lifelink 3/4. If a non-token creature your opponent controls would die, instead exile that card and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. And then you can pay 2 and a black to sacrifice another vampire or zombie and put 2 counters on Caritas to make him even bigger. So this is really good. Since our entire deck is removal, we can turn all of our really small removal spells into exile spells in that sense, just as long as Caritas is around. We've got plenty of ways to get him back as well, so all of our creatures can come back as long as they don't get exiled. So against aggro and burn as well, the lifelink can be quite brutal in that sense. And of course we can sacrifice zombies to get it out of most burn spells as well. So yeah, Caritas, not something to be messed with. Moving on, we've got our first board wipe. It is Languish, 2 and 2 black, sorcery speed. All creatures get -4/-4 until the end of the turn. A solid board wipe gets rid of indestructible creatures with the -4, putting them to 0 toughness, instantly kills them even with indestructibility. Gets rid of pretty much all tokens in the format as well, so if there's a token-based strategy, they're gone. There's not much that Languish doesn't hit in the format, unless they're playing ramp and going into something like what's his name, Guy's Revenge or something like that, or an Ulamog. That's about the only things that Languish doesn't seem to hit, but for the most part it is a solid board wipe, so that's why it's here. And we've got Archangel Iverson. It wouldn't be an angel control deck without her. 3 and 2 white, legendary creature, 4/4 with flash, flying and vigilance. Flash means that we can cast Archangel Iverson on our opponent's turn. So in response to an attack, we can put her out there to block any creature we want, and all of our creatures get indestructibility as well. So in the event that we mentioned where Brucella perhaps is getting some sort of removal, like Planar Outburst or something like that, we can flash out Archangel Iverson, give Brucella indestructible for the turn, and that will definitely close out the game if it wasn't already. And whenever a non-angel creature you control dies, you get to transform Archangel Iverson at the beginning of next upkeep, and she becomes Iverson the Purifier, a 6/5 flying. She does lose vigilance, which is unfortunate, but she gains a lot more attack. And when she transforms, she deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. So we do have flesh bags in order to flip our opponent, flip our Archangel Iverson, and potentially use Iverson as a board wipe in that sense. We don't have many creatures that are 3 toughness or less other than flesh bags, which will instantly die anyway. So this is essentially, it's a Radiant Flames that makes our Archangel Iverson a lot bigger, which is pretty sweet. So hopefully we get to see that happen. Moving on, we've got Cruel Revival. So 4 and a black, destroy target non-zombie creature, it can't be regenerated, and return up to 1 target zombie card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is best used when you've got a flesh bag marauder in your graveyard, because this can grab back the flesh bag and essentially mean that it is a hard-casted removal spell that will have another hard-casted sacrifice trigger on your next turn, or maybe on the turn that you're gone, depending on how long the game's been going. But yeah, that's why it's there. And then we've got Planar Outburst, speaks for itself, 3 and 2 white, sorcery speed, destroy all non-land creatures. It is a solid board wipe. Does have the added ability of Awaken as well, which turns this into a threat for our opponent. We can turn one of our lands into a 4/4 for the low price of 5 and 3 white, which is very far away, but it's likely to close out the game though, that's at that point. So it's very useful for that anyway. Moving on, we've got Obnixilis Reignited. So for 3 and 2 black, we've got a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. With +1, we can draw a card and lose 1 life, so that's card advantage. Absolutely awesome for us. Losing 1 life yet again is not too bad, since we do have a lot of life-gaining angels and life-gaining cards. So we can make the most of that. And -3 is a hard-casted removal spell, so we can do any of these things the moment Obnixilis wants to come down. So we can hard-cast remove something, or just destroy something later on. And his -8 ability, target opponent gains an emblem with whenever a player draws a card, you lose 2 life. So when he draws a card, or when I draw a card, he loses 2 life. So he's losing 4 life on each cycle, essentially. And with our Read the Bones, we can make ourselves draw extra cards, and also +1 on Obnixilis can also do it. So we can burn out our opponent in that sense quite quickly if we manage to ultimate Obnixilis, which with the amount of creature removal we've got, as long as they don't have something like an Anguished Unmaking, we can probably do that. And moving on, we've got Lin Viola the Preserver, 4 and 2 white, legendary creature angel, 5/5 flying. When Lin Viola enters the battlefield, if opponent has more life than you, gain 5 life. If he has more creatures than us, then we get a 3/3 angel as well. So our best option is to get this out when both of those things are a fact. We don't play many creatures, so it's quite likely that we'll be able to get our 3/3 angel, and obviously we'll be doing a lot of spells that drain our life as well. So we could potentially have less life than our opponent, and if it's burn, of course, we definitely will. And it'll allow us to stabilize in that sense as well, so pretty good for that. Sauron Grim Nemesis, 4 a white and a black. It is a 6 loyalty Planeswalker. His +1 is reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to its converted mana cost. We have some very expensive cards, so the likelihood of us hitting a card that deals damage is quite likely. So I think it's a 40% chance that it will deal 0 damage right off the very beginning of the game, which is, you know, negligible by the time you're at turn 6 and you've got your Sauron down. It's also card advantage as well, so whether or not it burns our opponent, it's still putting a card into our hand. His second ability is a minus ability, so Sauron deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain X life. So this can kill planeswalkers, it can kill big creatures up to 5 toughness without killing Sauron, and we gain any life that we just dealt from that minus ability. So we could be plussing, and then eventually we could minus for, like, you know, 8 or something like that, but we probably want to try go for his -9 ability, which yet again is another way to close out the game. All of our planeswalkers do have an ability to close out the game on their own. So for -9, you put a number of 1/1 black vampire knight tokens with lifelink onto the battlefield, equal to the highest life total among all players. So even if our opponent's got us down to 2 life and he's up at 30, for example, our -9's even better. If we've managed to preserve our life total, then it's great. If we're both on like 2 life each, then it is really bad and you don't want to do it. But I think it's quite likely that one of either us or our opponents on a decent amount of life total, maybe even 10. For a -9 ability to get 10 1/1 life linking tokens is pretty good nonetheless, but for the most part you'll just see us using the plus and minuses anyway. Finally, we have Brunner, the Fading Light. This is the other side of the Gisela combo. So for 5 and 2 white, legendary creature, 5/7 with flying and vigilance, and when you cast her, you may return target angel or human from the graveyard to the battlefield. So if they've gotten rid of our Gisela early in the game, we play Brunner, gets our Gisela, and then on our end step, we have both of them, and we can get ourselves a Brucella. We can also get ourselves a Lin Viola. We can also get ourselves an Archangel Iverson. So we do have a lot of angels. I don't think we run any humans, in all honesty. I'm pretty sure we don't. No, we don't. So we don't have any humans. Oops. For Brunner to attach to, but we do have some very, very big angels. She's exactly what we want to be targeting anyway. So that's why she's in here. And she's a 5/7, so she's out of most removal. That's not hard casted, of course. And we get Brucella off of her, so not much problem there. Moving on to the mana base. It's a fairly simple mana base. We've got 6 plains and 8 swamp. We have a lot of double blacks in the early game, so that's why the skew is there. But we do need a lot of double whites for the late game, so that's why we're not just splashing white as opposed to going even or anything like that. We have 2 shambling vents, a man land with the ability to become a 2/3 white and black elemental with lifelink that is still a land, so we can gain a little bit of life like that, block some tokens here and there. Pretty good man land for this deck. We have Isolated Chapel, comes in tapped unless we control a plains or a swamp. Very easy to do because we have a lot of basics. Mortuary Mire enters the battlefield tapped, but when it does enter the battlefield, we get to put a target creature from our graveyard on top of our library. So that could be one piece of the combo for the Brucella. That could be a Lin Viola, it could be any of our angels, it could be Caritas, any of our creatures. Could even be a flesh bag for some more removal. So it's a very good card in this deck to get our threats back on the board very quickly. Also, it goes into our hand as well on our next turn, so we can make the most of the cast trigger off of Brunner to get some double advantage. We then have 2 Evolving Wilds to thin out our deck a little bit and fix our mana if it needs to be done, which we don't want to go all 4 because we don't want to thin our deck out too much. Otherwise, we're going to struggle to hit some of these numbers here. And then finally, we have Forsaken Sanctuary. It's just a black and white tap land. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the deck list for today. So if you've enjoyed the deck, then be sure to check out the matches that should be falling shortly after this. Be sure to leave a like if you haven't already, and if you haven't already subscribed, be sure to do so immediately. But if you're not quite sure, stay for the end card, see the rest of the content we've got to offer, and as always, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.